Nick Saban was on Capitol Hill. He was meeting with some key senators, speaking in a roundtable about name, image, and likeness. This panel is, kind of an opportunity for a little bit more, showy things. Some senators like to make statements, but it was interesting to hear Saban be able to offer his expertise now out of the game. Some of it including he was suggesting that they find a way for revenue sharing without employment. He was, very much, not really speaking in favor of NIL. And we, from the Chris Lowe story, had some of Saban's comments already about at the end of the season, the players wanting to ask for NIL. Danny, it's an interesting position Nick Saban has decided to take on here in his early retirement weeks. What'd you make of some of Saban's comments, and what do you think this does to the conversation moving forward?
I wasn't in the least bit surprised that this has been his stance. I mean, I don't think this has been a secret that he hasn't been happy with it. I thought he was getting dragged a little bit unfairly. I noticed Scott Van Pelt last night on the One Big Thing kind of stood up for him and said, hey, look, like is somebody who coached for 50 years. And I get he's made a lot of money, but and it's easy to like poke fun at him and point out all the money and the disparity with the players. But I do think he truly is worried about the state of football. I do. I think, and if you talk to any coach out there, and a lot of them can't say it because they're worried to get used against them in recruiting, I think a lot of coaches feel this way beneath the surface. That, they just, and it's funny because they're all saying the same thing. Yes, the players should be compensated somehow. Yes, they should have NIL, but they still want control over those players. They still want to be able to control when they can go, where they can go. And it's that dynamic that they're really struggling with, and that no one has a solution to how can we do this, especially without being employees. Like that, the way you position that was exactly the question I asked to Ross Dellinger. I talked to him this morning. I'm like, how is that going to work? And no one has a great answer for it. So like I left with more questions. I left, especially when hearing Ted Cruz, who it was only 60-40, go down to 50-50, that they would somehow be able to step in with any sort of resolution. So this is a mess that isn't going to get resolved anytime soon. But I was not surprised at all from Nick Saban taking the stance that he did.
You used the word control. There is a real concern around coaches that they don't have as much control as they used to have. And that's because, again, we say on the show all the time, if you want control like an employee, you need to make them employees. The Supreme Court said this business model is flatly illegal. Don't come back to us with the same thing, which guess what? The House case is probably on the way if they don't settle that thing. So I'm a little surprised that Saban wasn't more progressive here. I'm a little disappointed in Nick Saban, to be honest. He's making was making more than $1 million per game, right? He just retired to his $20 million beach house in addition to his lake house and all his Mercedes dealerships. He's like, that's not really the guy that to me should be speaking on like, oh, players are getting some money now. Like that's a little bit hypocritical when you've made so much money off of fixed labor cost. And now instead of having to respond with an in-kind scholarship, you have to give some slightly fair approximation of what these guys are worth, because the players are worth more than the coaches. It's going to take us a good amount of time, to get there. But I thought Saban would really be a good voice for the sport when he retired and really cared about the sport more than this. And I think somebody who really cares about the sport more than this would push for a little bit more aggressive model. Like if you care about saving the sport for the long term, he's just digging his heels in. Like nobody thinks this revenue share non-employee status thing is going to work in any way. It was just like him up there bitching like an old retired coach. And I was like, man, this is kind of lame, dude. Like I thought you were going to be more like better for the sport than this and be a true voice for the sport when you retired. So I was disappointed.
I didn't get that vibe at all. I mean, I don't think it's hypocritical to make money and then argue that the players should be making more money. I think that's
his comments about how they said, like, he's like, the players only care about money now.
Yeah,
I think they do.
That might be true. Like if
right, so it's okay for Saban to only care about money. Like he wasn't going to leave the Dolphins until Alabama backed up the Brinks truck.
Nick Saban's never said it wasn't okay that the players only care about money. He just said that it wasn't what he was interested in doing anymore because the players only care about money. That's two completely different things.
Yeah, I don't think Nick Saban should be disqualified because of his career earnings or real estate.
Yeah.
Like, I think his perspective is looking out for not just the top teams that are trying to, recruit all the same. I think Nick Saban, coming from Kent State, I think like Nick Saban, who like came up through coaching, probably wants to include as much of college football's past into the future as possible. And he's offering as progressive compensation as he can, but also not offering any real solutions.
I would push back on that. If you're saying he's going to be offering the most progressive thing you possibly can do to save the sport,
I didn't say
completely
most
disagree.
progressive. I just said his view of what he thinks,
No.
like the status.
I thought you just said it's most progressive as he possibly can. I apologize. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I just think that he was sharing his thoughts about what he experienced. And I feel like as somebody who was in it for 50 years, he's got a pretty good idea of how things have changed over that time. And I mean, I don't think that his plan works either. I think that if you want to have revenue sharing, then you might as well just make them employees, because that's how it works with professional sports already. They have revenue sharing and they pay the players and they are employees. And if they are employees and they are under contract, then you will have some sense of control over them and what they do. Maybe you can't have them, tell them you can't go out to the bars tonight, boys, but you can still have some control over them in that you kind of have to fulfill these duties if you want to continue to be employed here. But I don't know, man. I don't think it's fair to expect Nick Saban to be the guy to save college football. Like, none of us have an answer for how this is going to work. We know what the problems are, but I don't think anybody has a definitive solution to fix it. I think kind of discussing it and doing this kind of stuff, whether it should be done in Congress or not, totally different story. But I just think having these discussions is what leads to an eventual solution, or solution is too strong a word, what leads to an eventual compromise and a structure that works for a little bit until it no longer works and we have to come up with a new structure.
Okay, so
America.
That's what. To rephrase, I'm disappointed that he offered something that clearly won't work. Okay, like I thought that he cared enough about the sport and thought deeply enough about this that maybe talk to some smart people, like what could actually work for the long term, what gets us on the right track to working. Maybe we have a level that is more employee status, which I think a lot of schools would probably like some sort of bifurcation here, right? Okay, like maybe we get with the upcoming election, maybe some of this NLRB stuff actually is invalidated, which certainly if the election goes a certain way, it definitely could be. And then you have maybe a bit of a breaking off. You have more of a revenue sharing level and then a non-revenue sharing level. There are things you could propose that could theoretically work. What Saban proposed won't work. Like, this just clearly won't. It's not a viable option. So from that standpoint, I was disappointed in him.
Well, what did he propose? I thought he was just complaining and laying out the issues. Did he have a solution?
Well, so he did a couple things. He was complaining that players only care about the money now, right? Which, from my standpoint, that was kind of hypocritical. And it's like, Nick, like, you left Kent State for a reason. You left Michigan State for a reason, right? You left the Dolphins for a reason. You didn't take the Texas job because Bama backed up the truck, bought out the mortgage, all that kind of stuff for a reason. Now, he also proposed that they revenue share some amount, keep the control, but make them not employees, which, again, the control plus the employees thing is just not going to work. Like, you lose 9-0. It's kind of just.
So, yeah, but I don't think Nick Saban has a firm grasp on the law. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's not a lawyer.
Right. But I'm saying like he's such a good spokesperson. I feel like they missed this opportunity, man. Like you could get some smart people with Nick Saban, have him be the voice of something that could actually work, and this won't.
But that's the thing. Who are the people that he's being the voice for? So he's just like a PR person for a consulting company. I mean, he's just sharing his opinions in front of Congress. That's why he was asked to be there.
Well, I mean,
sure,
he has been.
Who's he the PR person for now?
Nobody.
But he's
been
coaches,
I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Current coaches and current athletic directors. I mean, he's been proposed as the perfect, potential college football commissioner. NFL commissioner works on behalf of the owners. They don't work on behalf of the players. So, like, that is the side that he is approaching it from. On the winning thing, or on the players only worried about money, I'll push back, Bud, because you can't win a national championship at Kent State. You can't win a national championship at Michigan State. I mean, maybe you could do that. So he ultimately got to where he could win national championships, right? And I think that's the struggle for him, is that players now don't care about championships. They care about getting paid. And I think that's a really tough spot for him to be on, because it's always been, that was a big sell. And yes, I know there's been money handed to them and that's been a part of the equation, but that has overtaken the conversation where it is all about. And he said 70 to 80% of the players just want to know, am I getting playing time? Am I getting paid? And I think that's a real struggle. And I would say that maybe that doesn't even come from the system. It comes from youth. Like, it comes from parents. I think it's a much bigger problem than, oh, the players are getting NIL money. Then all of a sudden this has happened. You see this creep in at youth sports with the transferring and getting to the better schools, and in high school, where can I win? Where can I increase my best chance to get paid at the next level? And a lot of times that messaging comes from the parents. So I don't know if that's where I would disagree with Saban, that I see where it's been a problem for you. It's been a problem for a lot of people at a lot of different places. And it's the first time he's really had to deal with it.
By the way,
I'm sure he's pissed that he miscalculated. I mean, like it's pretty well known, like Bama's collective was not as good as some other collectives out there. And I think that he thought that the discount that players would take to play for him would continue forever, or the NIL discount. I'm not saying Bama had a discount in other areas of recruiting, certainly, and they did provide some value with NFL development. But like, he was so damn good under the old system, he failed. Like, he finally found a college rule change that he failed to adapt to. I think he's pissed about it.
Well, the place that I have a problem with him, because of all the stuff, I feel like I'm defending Saban. The place that I found that feels hypocritical is when all of a sudden now he's the voice for parity. Like, that to me is hypocritical when he's like, hey,
Yes.
let's make sure everybody's on a level playing field, when you've had this advantage for 17 years creating this monster behemoth program because you had an advantage the whole time. And now all of a sudden you want to spread it out. That to me is the part that's hypocritical.
But is that hypocrisy, or is that looking into the future and seeing how things are changing? Like, I think he's right. I think that if things continue the way they are, and there's really no kind of it's just unchecked, whatever the hell you want to call it, that we're dealing with, 10 to 15 years from now, fans are going to start looking at this product and asking, why the hell should I care? There's only like 10 teams that really matter.
Okay, I'd push back on that huge. Like, how many different programs seriously compete for the biggest prize now? Like, I think NIL has created a lot more parity, because Bama and Georgia can't hoard every single potential future superstar on their roster for the long term. They lose some. Like, Auburn misses in recruiting, they go and they go buy that kid back from Georgia, or recruit that kid back from Georgia off their roster, right? Like, Bama can't hold all the 5 stars on their roster anymore. Like, we talked about Ole Miss winning the SEC. Ole Miss has not won the SEC in the color television era. Right? Like,
Yeah,
I think it's creating more parity across.
But there used to be 130 schools that people cared about. The way this sport is going, everything is being driven towards 2 conferences.
Yeah,
like,
but
the conferences no longer exist. It's 2 leagues now.
In what way does Super League make you not care about the MAC? Like, if you like the MAC school, your school never competed for a national title, college football playoff, anything like that. Like, you like that school because you like watching your guys compete against your other local rivals. In what way does that change?
The MAC doesn't change, but they're going after casual viewers. The MAC has never been for casual viewers. They are gearing the sport towards casual viewers, the people we know, who, when we see them and when we go out, fans or family, friends, you go to like your, a family, whatever gathering, and everybody asks you 1,000 questions about, well, who's good this year? Who's going to win this? Who's going to win that? The people who do not pay attention until the very end. That's who everything is being geared towards. Where if you are a diehard, and you are a diehard of a team that isn't one of those Big Ten or SEC schools, or even if you are and you're like the bottom tier of it, at some point, I mean, you've seen it with professional sports. Like, everybody outside the NFL, the more they expand the playoff and the more focus they put onto playoff and postseason in every single sport, regular season interest wanes. Overall fan interest wanes. And I think that with this current format, the way things are going, until they get whatever employees, revenue sharing, however you want to do it, if you keep going this direction, and I don't think they will, I do think 10 to 15 years from now, a large portion of fans will start checking out. You're already seeing it. I hear it from people all the time. A lot of people aren't watching as close as they used to. They're not paying as close of attention. They don't like the current landscape of the sport.
why are ratings up then over the last couple years and everything? Like our
Casuals.
Attendance back-to-back years.
Yeah. So
Like,
I thought the
Dennis
interesting thing from
told that
Dennis's
story.
article on the attendance,
Mhm.
this is where I think it hurts the group of five. All the power fours were up. Even the Pac-12 was up. The only group of five that was up was the Sun Belt. Every other
Mhm.
group of five conference was down in attendance after we're seeing this bump. That's where I do feel like they're maybe disinterested and the system is screwing me over. Like we don't have a chance. But I would say, when did you ever have a chance? Like, when were you ever going to really compete for a championship in the history of college football? The 130 teams, and when we talk about it all the time, well, there's really only 15 programs a year, but like in a span of a cycle of 10, 15 years, it's really 25. So like, what's the difference? I think it brings in those. So at least like the MAC, if you win like if you're a, Western Michigan with PJ Fleck, you might be like, hey, we can make the playoffs this year. So wouldn't that help? Like the expansion, wouldn't that help the group of five?
For a little bit, yeah.
Earlier,
I
Bud.
said 10 to 15 years down the road. I'm not talking about right now.
Oh man, hey,
I
listen.
think the one thing that does hurt the group of five, because I don't want to be blind to this, is the portal. Right?
Oh, kills them.
Yes.
Because like NIL players getting paid, I don't think that hurts the sport at all. And there's no data that says that people actually stop watching because of that. I do think that eventually we will find data that all of the player movement, because they're not willing to recognize them as employees and put them on contracts that prevent the movement, creates a sort of a dynamic where you're not able to have as much attachment to your school's star.
Mhm.
So their refusal to make these guys employees, right, and put them on contracts where they can't just move around all the time, that's actually hurting the sport quite a bit, which is their own doing. Like, they're dragging their feet on this, and they're allowing for the unlimited transfer portal.
For sure. Because like you think about it, and it sounds hokey. But like if you're somebody who became a college sports fan while you were in school, like you have that connection because you were, and they were, supposedly they were your classmates at the time, but we even kind of lose that because now everybody's taking online courses. So you never see any of these players around campus. They're always in the facility or taking their courses. But like there's that connection that you develop with a kid when they come to your team and you see them as a freshman and you see them kind of quote unquote grow up as players, as people, then they move on and you keep that connection. That's gone now, unless even at the top, because if you're Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia, not so much Georgia, but a lot of the top programs, you're bringing in new guys every single year, even no matter how good you already are. So it's like there really isn't that kind of connection that fans start to get with the players. And I think that is something that maybe doesn't seem like a big deal on the surface, but that, yeah, along with my 10 to 15 years thing that like Saban was saying, that's one of those little fraying threads that I think is causing people to separate themselves emotionally from the game.
I think that's
They
what
also-
killed college basketball, which started with the one and done when you couldn't get used to your players. Then it carried over into the transfer portal era. And I think it's one of the big reasons why women's basketball has been so huge. You've got stars that are there for 3 or 4 years. They're even staying for 5 years because they're going to make more money off NIL. So that's been the great solution. But I also think that's one of the reasons you have recognizable stars in Paige Beckers, Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brink, the girl at Stanford, and Angel Reese. Like, you've got a slew of stars who have been there multiple years. And so we start to recognize those players in those same uniforms. Not to say they can't move too, because Haley Van Lith moved to LSU, but like there have been more stars that have stayed at one place. And I do think that tugs on what has made college football special over the years is getting to know your players, seeing them stay, and being able to root for them and cheering. Because I do think that turns a lot of fans off. Like, I'm sure Ole Miss fans are like, wait a second, Quinshon Judkins, like, he was our guy. Like, we've been watching him for 2 years and he just bounced. Like, and they're still going to be good. But imagine if they weren't going to be good this year, then they'd really be upset. Then you're really on the out.
Bud mentioned the house case on our YouTube channel right now. If you've not gone to check it out, Bud, I got it. I promise these aren't plants, just a promo, but we've got the Cover 3 tailgate. Hey, Bud, thanks for the breakdown of the house case. I'm looking forward to future breakdowns on other legal cases. We got you covered. That's why it's called billable hours. Dre in the tailgate this morning. He jumped in at 9:46 a.m. before he got started. Said that breakdown was fire emoji. I've seen multiple Twitter accounts who are very interested in college football and the future of college sports. They've all been pointing to it like, hey, this is what you need to pay attention to. Bud did a good job of identifying there's not a good explainer of what exactly it is and what it's going to mean moving forward. So again, go and check it out on our Cover 3 YouTube channel, where we've got that nice little breakdown. Kendall also said, killed it. So we appreciate your hard work of putting that together. We had a lot of good work on the editing side. Mikey, Greg, whole team really came through with that. So like the way it turned out. And if you want a good explainer of that case, which is driving the employment conversation in college sports, one of the reasons why they called Nick Saban up to Capitol Hill, then be sure to go and check that out.
Quick question. Why did they do the roundtable, which meant nothing, as opposed to talking to the House, which would have had a lot more at stake?
I would assume that's a deal. If I was Nick Saban's attorney or Nick
Right,
Saban,
right.
I would agree to the lowest stakes, most informal,
Right.
like
No cross-examination. He'll have to push back.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. I do not want to be perjured for anything that is going on in terms of this conversation.
So how much were your guys getting 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Great point.
Not all those Dodge Chargers.
Yeah, I think that he was trying to avoid the oath and anything that could be held against him. And Nick, that's why you're the greatest. Smart man.